progression of an exercise that we can use to work on shoulder stabilization. That includes retraction and external rotation of the rotator cuff, and then getting into an overhead press is working into a half kneeling position with a very light resistance band. So in my half kneeling position, I'm going to hold the band opposite of the front leg, and my initial motion is going to be just pulling that elbow, well, first setting the shoulder blade back, and then pulling that elbow back to equal my shoulder, and externally rotating. And this is pretty easy. Now the challenge is as I straighten my arm up towards the ceiling, is keeping that shoulder blade back into that externally rotated position, and bringing it back down, and reversing that motion out. Now, if the resistance is too much, what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to probably get it retracted. I might even be able to get externally rotated, but as I press up, my arm is going to come forward over my head or in front of my head. And this is a common flaw that we might see when someone doesn't have good shoulder mobility or good shoulder stability as they take a loaded weight. So when we lift that weight overhead, instead of that arm being over the head or even slightly behind it, it actually comes a little bit forward. And when that happens, now the weight is getting pulled forward, and that's creating a lot of torque on my shoulder, on my elbow, on my wrist, so that can create pain in a lot of different areas. So what we want to do is shoulder blade set. We're going to pull it straight back, externally rotate it so our hand is pointed upward now, and then straighten that arm up towards the ceiling, keep that arm behind my ear. So if you want to see it purely from the side, I'm going to pull it straight back, I'm going to externally rotate it, and then pressing up. And as I get into that position, I'm thinking about my overhead lifting position, which is with my arm back, as opposed to a flawed position will be bringing it back and then pressing it with my arm coming forward, right? So we want to be retracted, externally rotated, and then pressing up into that overhead position. And as I press up further, that creates more torque in the arm. So even though the band might be very light resistance here and even here, as I press up to the top, that's giving me a lot of challenge and a lot of cue to keep that shoulder blade stable as I go through that motion.